Hey there, hi there, ho there. Welcome to Unit 7, Flooding. So now we're going to get into some weather-related disasters. We've been talking about earthquakes and volcanoes and how kind of the terrestrial Earth, the solid Earth, and plate tectonics is driving that. Now that at least the next couple of units, and we'll kind of jump in and out, we're talking again more weather-related disasters. But they do have an impact on geology, and geology does impact them, thus we talk about them. So, flooding. Flooding is where we're going next. So let's just talk about some of the basics as it pertains to flooding. I mean, generally speaking, flooding is an overflowing of water onto land that's normally dry. Makes sense. They can occur quickly or over a long period of time. Sometimes they only last a few hours. Sometimes they can last weeks or longer. It just depends on a number of different factors. Floods are definitely the most common and widespread of all weather-related disasters. In fact, floods affect more people on Earth than typically any other disaster. So floods are number one. I mean, even in the United States, floods kill more people each year than tornadoes, hurricanes, lightning. So floods are, when we think again, disasters, we think, oh my gosh, hurricanes and all these people dying, tornadoes and volcanoes and earthquakes and all these people dying. It's not usually the case. Floods are definitely one of the more deadly of the disasters, unfortunately. So what happens when a bunch of water spills onto the ground or a bunch of precipitation falls from the sky and hits the ground? What happens to that water? Why does it flood it sometimes and why does it not flood other times? Well, a lot of it has to deal with, what is that precipitation? What is that rain, water, whatever sitting on? If it's kind of hard ground, cement and roads and stuff, there's nowhere for that water to sink into, so you'll get some floods. Or even looking areas that aren't paved, just dirt. If the dirt is unsaturated, meaning there's not a lot of water content in it, the water will kind of percolate and soak right into the ground. As the ground becomes more and more saturated, it becomes a point where it really can't hold any more water. And so if we get a little bit more precipitation, then we're going to have water on the surface. Then we'll have flooded soil. Just some basics. These are the 2021 fatal fatalities until, I think, up through September. So, not all the way through 2021. As you can see, in total, there's 134 fatalities thus far in 2021. Males much more prevalent than females. Interesting to note. And it can affect a wide range of individuals. But something to note here: looking at all these different activities in which assesses if there was a death, a fatality in a flood, what was that person doing? Driving. Driving is by far number one. We have stupid motorist laws here in Arizona. If you knowingly drive into a flooded area, you are responsible for the bill, for the emergency crew, for the helicopter, whatever it is, to come in and get you, save your car, or whatever. It's just dumb. It's just dumb to do. And as you can see, this is why. People driving into flooded areas, they die. So, looking at all of those fatalities around the country, it's pretty spread out pretty good. Mostly along, kind of the south regions and kind of up into the northeast. But it's spread out pretty good. Overall, if you look, this was just this year. This is just deaths this year. There's some events, large storms that occurred in Tennessee causing a lot of these deaths. Hurricane Ida coming up and flooding New Jersey, New York, causing a lot of these deaths as well. Looking at the previous year, 2020, much less deaths in total, but again, driving is the number one activity that kills or provides the most fatalities in floods. Something also very sad sometimes to look at, even though so far in 2021, the age range is pretty dispersed. Sometimes, unfortunately, the fatalities could really lean more towards the younger group, especially if parents are driving into flooded areas and not being able to save their children. The children can't swim. The children die. Moral of the story: don't drive into flooded areas. Don't be stupid. This is the last year, 2020 fatalities. You can see kind of some similar states as well. Really not much going on up in the north. So from the past 10 years, 2010 to 2020, you can see no state is, well, actually, I take that back. 3 states are without flood deaths. It looks like we have New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and anyone know this one? It's the smallest one. Rhode Island. That is correct. That is correct. But yeah, so you can see no state is, well, excuse me, 3 states are without flood fatalities, but for the most part, flooding can be widespread and it can kill in any number of areas. There's no specific flood season. When we talk about hurricanes, there's a hurricane season. That's later in the semester. But with flooding, there's no particular flood season. Most flooding in the U.S. occurs from spring through fall. So spring, summer, and fall. Winter time is typically, it's low, but you can still get flooding in the winter time. But typically, most flooding occurs spring, summer, and fall. In early spring, the floods associated with early spring floods tend to be located near areas where there was heavy snowfall, that heavy in the wintertime. So there's a lot of snow builds up. Say it gets a really warm day and all that stuff melts. You can get a big rush of water causing flood. So early spring, that's typical of a cause of a flood in the early spring, melting heavy snowfall. Now getting into spring and summer, severe thunderstorms throughout the country, monsoons in the southwest, where obviously we are, causing both of those, typically causing flash floods in this season. So spring and summer, mostly storms, thunderstorms, or monsoon storms, again causing flash floods. And then getting into a little bit later in the year, summer and into fall, a lot of times the floods you'll see around this season are going to be coastal areas being affected due to tropical storms and hurricanes being kind of pushed inland. So yeah, and that's going back to if you can see here, a lot of these deaths in the late summer into fall, August, September, happened in these 2 states, and one was tied to thunderstorms. One was tied to hurricane, a storm surge kind of pushing heavy water through. So again, it's not set in stone, but this is just typically in the U.S. in these different seasons. This is the cause for the flood. But again, it could flood at any time of the year in a number of different places in the country. Again, flooding occurs in every U.S. state and territory. It's also more likely to occur in areas which have seasonal thunderstorms. Excuse me. Flood prevalent topography, so nice flat areas very prone to flooding, or channeled areas, steep, deep canyons can flood. Deserts, locations along the coast. We are very prone to flooding the desert. We think of desert, it's dry. We actually get a lot of floods. The reason we get a lot of floods, not only here but elsewhere, there's a lot of water. There's a lot of rivers. You start adding more water to areas where there already is water, you can saturate the ground, you can raise river levels, you can raise lake levels, and they can spill out onto the land, flooding. So there's a lot of water already in the U.S. and on the globe. You add more to that in certain areas, you're going to get floods. This looks at precipitation over the past 30 days prior to October 4th, 2021. So basically the month of September 2021, you can see a lot of heavy rainfall kind of in this coastal areas, mostly due to kind of tropical storms and thunderstorms. It is hurricane season causing flooding in some of these areas. At the time that this is made, so again, October 4th, this is the current map of the U.S. looking at streams that are flooded. So black would be a flood stage. So you do see down in Louisiana, we see a couple of areas that are experiencing floods right now. Arizona is not without floods. Again, we have plenty of water. We don't necessarily think about it. We have water, so rivers that can flood. We get intense thunderstorms and storms during the monsoon that can dump a lot of rain real fast. And when it hits that compact, hard dirt, it's got nowhere to go, can't soak in, so it floods. And looking around Arizona, though, right now, we don't really have any blacks, no flood stages. We're getting close on, when you get into some of these blue areas, we're getting close into a couple of areas, but no floods to speak of in Arizona as of October 4th. But again, the reason there are floods, it's not just rain, it's not just snow melt, but it's also when ocean waves get pushed on the shore, typically during tropical storms or hurricanes, but also when dams or levees break, or even when dams are created. So that's where we'll kind of pick it up when we come back and pick it up with different types of floods in section 2. But before we go, let me give you the first part of the super secret code. It is the number 3. The number 3. You got me? The number 3. We'll pause there. When we come back, we'll talk about the different types of floods. Not all floods are the same. See you in a minute.